Have you ever wondered if there's a link between sugar and cancer? It's a question that's been buzzing around in the world of health and science, sparking debates and discussions among experts and enthusiasts alike. Is our sweet tooth potentially fueling a danger much graver than just cavities and weight gain? Could the sweetness we often crave be creating a hospitable environment for the growth of cancer cells? To address this, let's first establish the basics. Sugar, as we know it, is a simple carbohydrate that our bodies use for energy. It's in fruits, dairy, grains, and yes, those irresistible desserts. But here's where things start to get interesting. Cancer cells, like all cells, need energy to grow and spread, and they're notorious for being particularly greedy when it comes to fuel consumption. So, where does sugar fit into this picture? Well, sugar is a key player in a process called fermentation. If you're thinking about the process that gives us beer and wine, you're on the right track. But it's not just about creating your favorite beverages. Fermentation is a biological process that happens in our bodies, particularly in our cells. In the simplest terms, fermentation is a way for cells to convert sugar into energy. But unlike normal cells, cancer cells rely heavily on this process, even when there's plenty of oxygen around. This phenomenon, known as the Warburg effect, is a hallmark of cancer, and it's here that sugar's role becomes a topic of concern. The theory goes like this: the more sugar we consume, the more we potentially fuel this fermentation process, thereby providing cancer cells with the energy they need to grow and multiply. But before we draw any conclusions, it's important to note that this is still a topic of ongoing research. Scientists are working tirelessly to understand the intricacies of this sugar-cancer connection to bring us closer to definitive answers. To understand this better, let's delve into the process of fermentation and how sugar plays a part in it. We often associate fermentation with making bread or brewing beer, but what exactly is it? Let's take a moment to delve into this fascinating process. At its core, fermentation is a biological process that breaks down sugar into simpler substances. Think of it as a molecular transformation party, where sugar is the guest of honor, and it changes its outfit to become something entirely new. The magic happens in the absence of oxygen, where sugar, such as glucose, is broken down by yeast or bacteria. These little helpers or microorganisms convert the sugar into other compounds. In the case of bread and beer, it's carbon dioxide and alcohol. But it's not always about the bubbly and the buzz. In our bodies, for instance, fermentation helps produce lactic acid, a crucial player in our metabolism. Now let's imagine a sugar molecule entering this process. It's like stepping onto a dance floor full of energy and ready to boogie. As it dances around, it interacts with other molecules and begins to change. It's like shedding layers of a fancy dress piece by piece until it's transformed into something simpler, something different. This transformation releases energy, and in the world of microorganisms, energy is the currency of life. But fermentation is not just about breaking down sugar. It's a process that's deeply embedded in life on Earth. It's used by organisms ranging from the tiniest bacteria to us, complex human beings. It's fundamental to digestion, to the making of vitamins, to the cycle of life and death itself. And here's where things get interesting. Because fermentation breaks down sugar and releases energy, it also plays a crucial role in the growth of cells, including cancer cells. So the next time you bite into a slice of freshly baked bread or sip a cold beer, remember that you're enjoying the fruits of fermentation, a process that's as natural as life itself. Now that we know how fermentation works, we can better understand its role in cancer cell growth. So what role does sugar play in fermentation? Well, to unravel this mystery, let's start at the very beginning. Fermentation is a metabolic process that converts sugar into acids, gases, and alcohol. And guess what's the primary fuel for this process? You're right, it's sugar. Without sugar, fermentation simply wouldn't occur. Let's break it down a little further. During fermentation, yeast and certain types of bacteria feed on sugar. As they consume the sugar, they produce alcohol and carbon dioxide as byproducts. This reaction is what causes bread to rise, beer to become alcoholic, and milk to turn into yogurt. In each of these cases, sugar is the indispensable fuel that kickstarts and drives the whole process. Now, let's take a sharp turn and bring this back to our main topic: cancer. It might seem like a leap, but bear with me. Just as yeast and bacteria thrive on sugar during fermentation, cancer cells also require sugar to grow and multiply. They have a voracious appetite for glucose, a form of sugar that our body uses for energy. Much like the yeast in a loaf of bread, cancer cells gobble up glucose and ferment it. even when there's plenty of oxygen around. This phenomenon is known as the Warburg effect, named after the Nobel laureate Otto Warburg, who first observed it. The Warburg effect is a hallmark of cancer cells. By fermenting glucose, cancer cells churn out the energy they need to multiply and spread, all the while creating an acidic environment that helps them thrive and outcompete healthy cells. So, if we circle back to our initial question, what role does sugar play in fermentation? It's clear that sugar is the ignition key that starts the engine of fermentation. And when it comes to cancer, sugar is the high-octane fuel that drives the rampant growth and proliferation of cancer cells. Sugar then becomes a vital component not just for fermentation but also for the proliferation of cancer cells. How does sugar contribute to cancer cell growth? Let's dive into this intriguing question. We've established that sugar plays a vital role in the process of fermentation, but how exactly does this relate to the growth of cancer cells? To understand this, we need to delve a little deeper into the biology of cancer cells. Unlike normal cells, which primarily use oxygen to generate the energy they need to survive, cancer cells prefer to use sugar, or glucose, as their main source of energy. This process is known as glycolysis, a form of fermentation that happens in the cells. Now you may be wondering, why do cancer cells prefer sugar? The answer lies in the rapid growth rate of these malignant cells. You see, cancer cells divide and grow at an extraordinarily fast pace. To support this rapid growth, they require a constant supply of energy. And sugar, being a readily available and easily metabolizable source of energy, fits the bill perfectly. So when we consume sugar-rich food or drinks, we're essentially providing these rogue cells with the fuel they need to grow and multiply. It's a bit like adding gasoline to a fire. The more sugar we consume, the more we potentially feed these cancer cells, enabling them to thrive and spread. Furthermore, the fermentation process, fueled by sugar, allows cancer cells to survive and even flourish in low-oxygen environments, which are often found in the center of solid tumors. This is a key survival strategy for these cells. But what about our healthy cells? Well, they also use sugar for energy, but they primarily rely on a much more efficient process called oxidative phosphorylation, which uses oxygen. And unlike cancer cells, they can adjust their metabolism based on the body's needs and the availability of nutrients. So, could reducing sugar intake help in controlling cancer? Let's explore this further. Can reducing sugar intake help control cancer? This is a question that has intrigued scientists and researchers for years. The body of research on this subject is expansive, diverse, and continually evolving. As we delve into this topic, remember that the relationship between sugar and cancer is far from straightforward. Current research suggests that sugar itself is not a direct cause of cancer. However, excessive sugar consumption can lead to obesity, and obesity is a well-established risk factor for various types of cancer. Therefore, while sugar does not directly feed cancer cells, a diet high in sugar can contribute to conditions that foster cancer development. In the quest to understand the role of sugar in cancer development, some studies have suggested that reducing sugar intake could potentially slow down the growth of cancer cells. But it's important to note that this doesn't mean simply cutting out sugar will eliminate the risk of cancer. Cancer is a complex disease influenced by a multitude of factors, including genetics, age, lifestyle choices, and environmental exposures. A balanced diet, rich in fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and whole grains, can contribute to overall health and cancer prevention. This isn't just about reducing sugar, but also about maintaining a healthy weight, keeping our immune system strong, and providing our bodies with the nutrients they need to function optimally. In addition to a balanced diet, regular exercise, adequate sleep, and stress management are also crucial components of a healthy lifestyle that can help in cancer prevention.